Moving into our presentations, our first presentation is on the Electronic Submissions Gateway, the Road to Modernization. Our presenter, Jessica Bernhardt, is the AdminApps Program Manager and ESG Program Manager in the Office of Information Management and Technology within the Office of Digital Transformation, Office of the Commissioner. Our next presentation is on the eCTD version 4.0 and the latest on eCTD. Our presenter, Jonathan Resnick, is a Project Management Officer in the Division of Data Management Services and Solutions within the Office of Business Informatics, the Office of Strategic Programs in CDER. Our final presentation of the session before the Q&A panel is on the electronic submission practicalities and application tips. Our presenter, Heather Crandall, is an operations research analyst in the Division of Data Management Services and Solutions within the Office of Business Informatics and the Office of Strategic Programs in CDER. Please join me to welcome our first presenter, Jessica Bernhardt.
Greetings, my name is Jessica Bernhardt. I am the ESG Program Manager here at the FDA. Today we are going to cover the Electronic Submission Gateway, also known as ESG, and the road to modernization. Today on the agenda, we will cover what is ESG, how does ESG work, who receives ESG submissions, ESG and industry collaboration, ESG growth, recent ESG enhancements, going green, modernization, ESG next gen, and then we'll have a session for key takeaways and questions. What is ESG? ESG is the FDA's electronic submission gateway. It is an agency-wide solution which accepts electronic regulatory submissions. This enables industry to communicate with the FDA by sending a secure submission for pre-market and post-market regulatory information for the FDA's review. How does ESG work? In the next section, we will learn how submissions are sent and received through ESG. How ESG works. Industry sends a single file or folder submission to the FDA via HTTPS. ESG then receives the submission and assigns a unique ID. FDA ESG then sends a receipt to the submitter acknowledging the transmission. The submission is automatically transferred to the center's inbox. Then a center acknowledgement is automatically generated and sent to the submitter via the FDA ESG. The center will then validate and process the submission by accessing the center's inbox. Additional information about the process can be found on the ESG website. Here is the submission process. As you can see, the industry submitter will submit to the FDA ESG. ESG will then forward the submission to the FDA center inbox. This is similar to the mail process where you mail a letter, the post office then receives the letter and then delivers the letter to your mailbox. It's important to note that ESG does not open or review any of the submissions. That does not occur until the center receives it. How do users send submissions? Users can submit through ESG by using the web trader or AS2. The web trader is a web-based interface compatible with Windows operating system, which requires a client to send documents and receive receipts and acknowledgments from the FDA. The WebTrader application makes communication with the FDA simple, cost-effective, and time-independent. All submissions are signed using a PKI certificate. PKI certificates are used for authentication and adds an extra layer of security. The web trader is an excellent option for small to medium-sized businesses or businesses without their own IT department. AS2 is a system-to-system connection. This allows industry partners to access the gateway via system-to-system communication. System-to-system communication, often referred to as an AS2 account, provides an automated connection to the FDA for submissions, receipts, and acknowledgments. The system-to-system communication requires software from industry partners. All submissions are also signed with the PKI certificates, which again is for authentication and adds an additional layer of security. AS2 is a great option for larger industry partners or industry partners with their own IT department. We have come to a challenge question. Challenge question number 1. Which of the following statements is not true? A. ESG opens the submission file and reviews content for accuracy. B. ESG delivers the submission file to the FDA Center without opening or reviewing content. C. ESG sends a receipt to the submitter to acknowledge the submission has been received. Which of the following statements is not true? If you guessed A, you are correct. Congratulations. Who receives ESG submissions? In this section, we will learn which centers, offices, and external partners receive ESG submissions. The FDA centers, offices, and community partners receiving ESG submissions are as follows. The Center of Veterinary Medicine, also known as CVM, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, also known as CDER, the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, also known as CDER, the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, also known as CIFSAN, the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, also known as CDRH, the Center for Tobacco Products, also known as CTP, Health Canada, also known as HC, Office of Regulatory Affairs, also known as ORA, Office of the Commissioner, also known as OC. For additional information on the centers, offices, and community partners receiving ESG submissions, you can visit the ESG website. ESG Industry Collaboration. In this section, we will learn how ESG and industry communicate. ESG's collaboration with industry. Per Prescription Drug User Fee Act, also known as PDUFA, FDA and industry will collaborate to plan and conduct meetings, review initiatives, and engage industry to provide feedback and/or participate in pilot testing prior to implementing significant changes that impact industry's interaction with the ESG. Annually, FDA leadership and PDUFA IT leadership review initiatives and provide opportunity for industry input. Many of you may have experienced firsthand this collaboration between industry and the FDA. Prior to releasing major software enhancements or upgrades, the FDA's ESG team will send out communication to industry requesting assistance with testing. Many of you may have participated in testing in the past. Industry testing is vital to ensuring software enhancements and upgrades the ESG releases are free of bugs and defects. The testing also ensures industry does not experience any issues after the software release. ESG team thanks industry for their participation in this testing and their vital feedback they provide. Industry and collaboration continued. In order to continue with the vital partnership between industry and the FDA, it is recommended that we continue to participate in PDUFA quarterly industry meetings, continue to participate in FDA and PDUFA leadership meetings, and continue collaborative activities with industry for impactful system and software changes. ESG growth. Learn how ESG has grown from 2015 until now. ESG growth by year. For ESG growth by year, we look at the total submissions as well as the total transactions. The total transactions include the submissions, acknowledgements, as well as receipts. For ESG growth by year, we're looking at 2015 to 2022. As you can see here, the submissions from 2015 to 2022 has over doubled, with 3 million submissions in 2015 and over 8 million submissions in 2022. Here you can see a huge increase from submissions in 2020 to submissions in 2021. This large increase from 5.7 million to 7.2 million is due to the COVID-19 submissions. We also look at the total transactions from 2015 to 2022, and the total transactions has increased from 9.2 million to 27.5 million from 2015 to 2022, which is a substantial increase. The average annual growth from 2015 to 2022 for submissions is 15%. Acknowledgements is 18%, data is 24%, and accounts is 14%. As you can see, the submissions and transactions steadily increase. For additional information on the submissions and transaction statistics, please visit the FDA ESG website and look under submission statistics. Recent ESG enhancements. This section will cover ESG enhancements for 2022 and 2023. 2022 ESG enhancements. The 2022 ESG enhancements included Account Portal 1.0 and Submission Virus Scanning. Account Portal 1.0 was implemented in August of 2022. This delivered a new front-end portal, which enhanced WebTrader user experience and automated the onboarding account management process, enables WebTrader account holder to use self-service features. The benefit for this enhancement provides self-service features which allows users to easily navigate the account creation process, update passwords and digital certificates, and upload mandatory non-repudiation letters. The account portal also adds role-based functions such as power users to manage specific account items for their company and conduct company submission searches. The account portal system will also auto-promote accounts from the ESG pre-prod environment to production upon center approval, which will help to reduce onboarding time. The second enhancement for 2022 was the Submission Virus Scanning, which was implemented July of 2022. This enhancement implemented virus scanning software at the agency level prior to downstream center submission processing. The benefit for this enhancement was that it enhances the ESG security by adding another layer of protection prior to reaching the FDA Internet. ESG's 2023 enhancements. The 2023 ESG enhancement included a core technology refresh. This core technology refresh was completed in March of 2023. It included migrating ESG databases, services, and software to a GovCloud FedRAMP high infrastructure. It included implementing center user functionality within the account portal. The benefits for this enhancement were to support the FDA Technology Modernization Action Plan, also known as TMAP, and the Data Modernization Action Plan, also known as DMAP, strategies. This enhancement allowed for the reduction of the data center footprint, providing a cost savings of operating and maintenance for all centers, and aligned with the FDA's mission of going green. The upload time between the industry user environment to ESG server in the cloud versus the on-premise server improved by 34%. This enhancement enabled the use of modern cloud technology, which enables scalability when the need arises. Also allowed for a more reliable environment for a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year implementation. ESG going green. This next section will cover how the ESG is making changes which supports FDA's Going Green initiative. ESG Going Green initiative. Effective February 2023, FDA will now accept non-repudiation letters electronically. Industry is no longer required to send a hard copy of non-repudiation letters, and doing so is optional. This will help to reduce the FDA and National Archive, also known as NAR's, carbon footprint and aligns with their Going Green initiative by reducing the amount of paper. ESG modernization through PDUFA 7 and PDUFA 3 commitments. In this section, we'll learn how ESG is modernizing. ESG modernization fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 25. Continue modernization through Prescription Drug User Fee Act, also known as PDUFA 7, and Biosimilar User Fee Act, also known as PDUFA 3 commitments, and other FDA strategic initiatives through the development of the ESG Next Gen. PDUFA 7 commitments in relation to ESG are to monitor and modernize. Under this, there are two PDUFA 7 commitments. The first one, FDA will continue to ensure the usability and improvement of the ESG. Annually, FDA will provide on the ESG website historic and current metrics on ESG performance in relation to public targets, characterizations, and volume of submissions and standards adoption and conformance. The second, FDA will advance the ESG cloud-based modernization with an improved architecture that supports greatly expanding data submission bandwidth and storage while continuing to ensure its stable operation. By the end of FY 2025, FDA will complete ESG transition to the cloud, including setup and integration of an enterprise identity and access management solution that will streamline applicant access to FDA resources. Annually, FDA will share progress against the implementation plan. FDA will engage industry to provide feedback and/or participate in pilot testing in advance of implementing significant changes which impact industry's interaction with the enterprise-wide systems. Similar to PDUFA, PSUFA also has commitments which include modernizing FDA's information technology infrastructure and supporting of cloud-based technologies in relation to the ESG. Vision for the next generation of ESG. The vision for the next generation of ESG is to provide the FDA with a trusted, secured, cloud-based, and unified submission gateway that is highly available, scalable, and accept a variety of electronic submissions for processing by line or subject-specific business processes. As you can see, this is the industry partners. This is the ESG NextGen, which will include an identity access management, user provisioning, and submission provisioning in a FISMA high environment, and will interact with FDA clouds and portals, as well as other FDA systems and portals that are on-prem. The vision for ESG NextGen in relation to FDA's strategic initiatives. The vision for ESG NextGen uses the 3 FDA strategic initiatives, which are Technology Modernization Action Plan, also known as TMAP, the Data Modernization Action Plan, also known as DMAP, and the Enterprise Modernization Plan, also known as EMAP, to develop the vision for the ESG NextGen. The Technology Modernization Action Plan, also known as TMAP, includes the modernization of FDA's technology infrastructure, enhancing FDA's capabilities to develop technology products to support its regulatory mission, and communication and collaboration with stakeholders to drive technological progress that is interoperable across the system and delivers value to consumers and patients. The FDA Modernization Plan, also known as DMAP, includes identify and execute high-value driver projects for individual centers and for the agency, develop consistent and repeatable data practices across the agency, and create and sustain a strong talent network combining internal strengths with key external partnerships. The Enterprise Modernization Action Plan, also known as EMAP, includes creating the infrastructure to support change, develop a common operational approach, and ensure strategic alignment. These 3 FDA strategic initiatives were taken into account when developing the vision for the ESG NextGen solution. The ESG NextGen approach. The ESG NextGen approach has used the product approach, which uses personas. There are several personas which were considered when developing the vision for the ESG NextGen. Those are the industry power user persona, the industry submitter persona, the ESG admin persona, the center admin persona, and the FDA center user persona. These personas are used to develop a story. That story is used to document requirements for each of these personas. The approach for the ESG NextGen is a complete technology refresh with the latest cloud-based and best-of-breed software. It also looks to examine the current business process, pain points that currently exist in the existing ESG in order to deliver a better user experience for external and internal users. The ESG NextGen team will collaborate with internal FDA stakeholders and industry in order to solicit feedback and validate functionality. ESG NextGen business process improvements. The ESG NextGen team looked at the current ESG and the pain points that currently exist in order to come up with the process improvements for the ESG NextGen. These process improvements include the following: streamline industry account onboarding process. This will include streamlining manual user onboarding process by using modern intelligent business process management platform and ICAM solutions. The next is to improve customer experience. The improvement of customer experience will reduce the help desk calls and improve customer experience by using CRM tools to provide updates on submission status and enable two-way communication between centers and users. The next is to improve the file transfer process by increasing file submission processing speed, support filed resume transfer function, handle large file sizes, and reduce the complexity in generating the proper submission packages. The next business process improvement will be to improve user management processes by consolidating user accounts and manual access management functions into a unified enterprise identity, credential, and access management ICAM solution for end users. The last business process improvement will be to support new use cases. This will ensure future capabilities of ESG-NG will be able to incorporate new technologies that can support future use cases as they arise. ESG NextGen targeted milestones. For FY22, the FDA worked on the planning phase for the ESG NextGen. This included developing the vision and planning, as well as market research. In FY23, we kicked off the proof of concept. This included the development and execution of the proof of concept. The proof of concept started in January of 2023 and is slated to end the end of the summer of 2023. The FY24 roadmap will include Release 1. This will include the Unified Submission Portal, Identity Account Management, User Interface Application Programming Interface, and Data Migration. Release 2 and 3 on the roadmap will take place in FY25. Release 2 will include enhanced Unified Submission Portal and Dashboard, as well as self-service capabilities. Release 3 will include large file size submissions, chatbots, and additional portal features, which are to be determined. As part of the roadmap, we will provide industry outreach and planning on a quarterly basis. We will develop testing strategy with industry and solicit testers. We will update the ESG NextGen website with information, specification, user guides, frequently asked questions, and progress. We will conduct testing with industry on each release before going live, incorporating lessons learned. For FY23 proof of concept, we will be reaching out to industry to assist with testing of the proof of concept. In addition, we are in the process of developing an ESG NextGen website, which will provide pertinent information to industry. And we have arrived at another challenge question. Challenge question number 2. The ESG NextGen modernization will incorporate all of the following business process improvement except A. Improve customer experience, B. Improve file transfer process, C. Check submissions for spelling errors, or D. Improve user management process. Which of the following ESG modernization will incorporate all of the following business processes improvements except If you selected option C, check submission for spelling errors, you are correct. Congratulations if you got the question right. Key takeaways and questions. In this section, we will cover the key takeaways from the presentation and allow for a question and answer session. The key takeaways from the presentation are as follows. The current ESG has been the FDA Central Intake Portal since 2005. Since 2015, there has been an annual average increase of 17% in submission volume and data size. ESG will modernize to accommodate a continued rate of growth well into the future. The current ESG has met all PDUFA requirements to date. The current ESG has served us well. However, as technologies and user requirements change, the FDA is assertively taking actions to ensure ESG will meet future industry, technology, security, and public requirements. The ESG NextGen will address pain points in the legacy ESG, as well as leverage technological advances to provide a modern and secure electronic submission gateway for industry to provide critical information to the FDA. If you have additional questions after today's question and answer session, my name is Jessica Bernhardt, and my email is jessica.bernhardt@fda.hhs.gov. Please feel free to reach out. For more information after the presentation and today's question and answer session, you can access additional information on the FDA's ESG website at this website address, www.fda.gov/for-industry/electronic submission gateway/default.htm. Also, you can email the ESG Help Desk at esghelpdesk@fda.hhs.gov. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Resnick. We're going to cover the fundamentals of the eCTD 4.0 concepts. We'll be talking a bit about the FDA implementation strategy and how you can prepare for 4.0. So let me begin by showing you some things that are directly from the ICH eCTD 4.0 implementation guide. This is an excerpt. It says, the goal of upgrading to eCTD 4.0 is to facilitate the processing of review of electronic regulatory submissions. And it goes on to say that some of the key business drivers include document reuse, which is the ability to submit a document once to a regulatory authority and then be able to refer to that document again in other sequences or in other applications without actually providing the physical file over and over. Document and metadata lifecycle. This is about the ability to manage versions of documents and the metadata around them. And then management of context groups. This is talking about ability to group documents together based on their nature of use. So let's get into the actual 4.0 concepts. So let's take a look at the concept of harmonized submission unit and document reuse. With harmonized submission unit, what we have is all content from Module 1 through Module 5 is now contained in a single exchange message or a single eCTD backbone file within the sequence. So you can see here how I've contrasted eCTD 4.0 versus 3.2.2. In 4.0, you have a single submission unit.xml file. It contains all the backbone information for the submission, including the studies. With 3.2.2, we had our regional backbone file, our index backbone file, and individual study tagging files for each study. With the document reuse concept, a document ID is established whenever you're sending in a new file. And that document ID captures information such as the document title for the file and the path to that file. So now if you wanted to reuse that particular file in a future sequence, it's very easy to do. All you have to do is reference that unique document identifier that you set up. All right, so let's take a look at another concept here with 4.0. It's called context of use. It's about the placement of a document within a table of contents, and it provides information regarding the usage of that document and its life cycle. If you haven't already drawn the connection, context of use is very similar to the current concept in 3.2.2 of leaf element. Now there's also a controlled vocabulary that's used quite heavily in eCTD 4.0, and we use what's called keywords, and they give additional information to that context of use. In other words, keywords really are replacing the eCTD 3.2.2 attributes and valid values. So here on the last line, we have an example of a context of use that has the predefined table of contents heading combined with the keyword. So you see in purple, 3.2.s.2 manufacturer. That's the actual context of use or table of contents heading combined with the information you see in green, which are the keywords. Now, taking this a little further, we talk about a context group. And a context group is just that combination of the context of use with the keyword. So we have up here the combination of a context of use and a keyword defines the context of the submission contents. If any one of them is different, the context is considered different. And that's important because if you use different keywords under a context of use, that can result in creating multiple headings in the eCTD viewer tool. So let's take a look here. So I have context of use X, and you can also think of this as context of use group X, and context of use Y. In context, both of them, if you look at the purple writing, have the same heading, 3.2.S.2 manufacturer. But they differ in terms of the keyword that the submitter has applied to the context of uses. So in the example of context of use X, the keyword is substance 1 and manufacturer 1. With context of use Y, it's substance 1, but it uses manufacturer 2. So it changes the context group. And that is why when you look at this visual on the right-hand side, you see two 3.2.S.2 manufacturer headings displayed because the keywords were different between them. Another concept in 4.0 is called group title. This is leveraging keywords. So there is a group title keyword, and it's applied to the lowest level of a context of use, context group, to further organize content under a CTD heading when multiple documents are allowed. And the sender assigns the group title to specify how the content should appear together. So of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So let's take a look here on the right at this visual. So I want to call your attention that we have the lowest level heading, M32P7, Container Closure System Blister. And there's 6 documents listed underneath that heading. And what the submitter has done is they've used the group title keyword to separate out those 6 documents into 2 groups. This is a new feature with 4.0. Now we get to priority number. Priority number is all about the ability for the submitter to set the order of the documents within a section or heading. It defines the display order in the eCTD viewer tool of the documents underneath that context of use or context group, right? So it doesn't matter which tool vendor you're using to view your eCTD submission, you should see the documents listed in the same order. Another feature of priority number is allows the submitter to change the order of the documents without having to actually life cycle them. So the sender can reorder submission content or insert documents. So this visual here is giving an example. So in sequence 1, document 1, 2, 3, and 5 were submitted, and they're in chronological order. The submitter decides in sequence 2 they want to change that order. And so you see now they have document 5 listed first. Along the subject of documents, we have document identifier. Every document is assigned a unique identifier. A unique identifier approach means that documents can be referenced, reused more effectively without resubmitting the physical file, without having to provide the path to that physical file. This can be used across a submission unit, which is a sequence. It can be used across regulatory activities with an application, or even across applications. These document identifiers are important. They're used to reference the document under a context of use or context group. You have the ability to reuse the document metadata. So remember, when you set up a document ID, that is including the title that you're associating with that physical file and the path to where that physical file is located. You can also do some other things here with document information. You can update the document title. And you can do this, again, without actually life cycling the document. So for example, if you made a typo in sequence 1, like this visual is showing, where you wrote manufact instead of manufacturing process and controls, you can do an update by using the priority number feature. Similar to the way that you can update the document titles, you can also update the display name values of a keyword. So in this example, the submitter has provided a display name for their manufacturer keyword of ACE manufacturer in sequence 1. And then, for whatever reason, they realized they needed to change the manufacturer name to Acme manufacturer. They were able to do this by just updating the display name value for that manufacturer keyword they used. They don't have to, delete or suspend the content underneath the heading and then submit it as new, like one would have to do with the current eCTD. Lifecycle is another enhancement with documents with 4.0. So today with 3.2.2, of course, Lifecycle is very powerful, and you can replace documents, and eCTD tracks the linkage between the different versions. But you can only do a one-to-one replacement today. With 4.0, this functionality is expanded. So not only do you still have the ability to do one-to-one, but you can also do many-to-one replacements or one-to-many. So I have a few visuals here. So the first visual is replace many to one. And you'll see in sequence 1, under context group 1, 3 documents were submitted. Then in sequence 2, the submitter has replaced those 3 documents with a single document called document 4. That's that many to one. Further to the right, that visual is showing the replacement operation of one to many. So we take this a little further. So now this submitter says, you know what? I want to change from the 1 document over to 3 documents again. Replace one to many. And you can see how that happens. From document 4, they replace it into what would be documents 5, 6, and 7. And the eCTD viewer tools will be able to track that linkage and association. So this is a good spot here to ask a couple of challenge questions. So the first one is, an eCTD 4.0 sequence contains a harmonized submission unit message called submissionunit.xml. Is that true or false? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Okay, and the reveal? True. This is one of the nice advantages of 4.0 over what we have today. It consolidates all those backbone files that we get in every sequence in 3.2.2 to just a single backbone file with eCTD 4.0. And it's called submissionunit.xml. Let's take a look at challenge question number 2. The eCTD 4.0 document lifecycle functionality allows one-to-one replacement, one-to-many replacement, many-to-one replacement, or is it D, all of the above? We'll give you a few seconds to think about the answer. Okay, and now the reveal. D, all of the above. So let's switch gears here and let's focus in on FDA's 4.0 implementation strategy. Of course, FDA can't implement anything until ICH has the eCTD 4.0 specifications ready to go, and they do. So ICH put out the 4.0 implementation package. It's out there. It's on the ICH website. It's currently on version 1.5 that was posted in May of last year. There's also a question and answer change request document available on the site as well. The latest version, 1.7, available as of June of last year. Also on this ICH page are regional implementation information, such as regional technical pilots, implementation dates, and links back to regional pages where you can find their regional implementation guides and other associated documents. Later on in this slide deck, I will have the link directly to this site, so you will have it all in one place. Now the FDA activities. FDA has put out a 4.0 technical conformance guide, as well as the regional 4.0 Module 1 implementation package. This was originally posted in February of 2020 for public comment. It's undergone a few revisions. The latest one is actually version 151 of the regional implementation package. It was posted September of 2022. There's also specifications for the validation criteria specific to 4.0, as well as comprehensive table of contents, headings, and hierarchy. Those are all up there on our eCTD website. We've created a 4.0 section of our website to help organize all of the content for you. Other activities that we've been doing here at FDA is testing out our software. We are busy testing out the latest versions of the eCTD software and validation tools that we use to make sure that we're getting into position to be able to fully support 4.0, and it's working as intended. We've also recently concluded a small technical pilot so that we get tests and sample submissions, not just that we create, but that we get from industry. Looking at our FDA implementation strategy, we're planning to have an initial release in 2024, and the scope of that will be to accept new applications in eCTD 4.0. In order to get there, we just recently completed a technical pilot that was to ensure that our FDA systems and tools were working properly with 4.0. We also plan to open the door to allow industry to submit sample eCTD4 submissions into FDA in the later part of this year to give you an opportunity to get feedback. And then as far as future phases, we're looking at about a year after we start accepting new applications in 4.0 to be able to accept the transition of current applications. So if you had already sent something in 3.2.2, you could follow it up with an amendment or a supplement in 4.0. And then once we have that all rolled out and working, then we would look at putting into place the two-way communication. Now, this slide is a really great resource for everybody. It has the hyperlink to the ICH webpage and the hyperlink to the FDA eCTD 4.0 webpage. So you have access to all the implementation guides and packages and specifications, everything you need to prepare for eCTD 4.0. So the ICH webpage has the implementation package, supplement documents for 4.0 implementation, regional implementation information, and links, and change control information. On our FDA page, that's where you get the regional stuff, the FDA implementation package, the FDA technical conformance guide, CTOC validations. So, a little bit, how can you prepare for 4.0? We have some recommendations. We recommend you discuss the 4.0 development plans with your vendor, your IT organization. Understand the specs. Is there a plan for transitioning to 4.0? And you can always send questions into ICH or FDA. Become familiar with the 4.0 concepts and enhancements. ICH has put together a couple of PowerPoint presentations that are available on the ICH 4.0 website. Look at the FDA Technical Conformance Guide. It's written in a more plain English type of writing to make it easier for even a non-technical person to understand. And then know where to find the 4.0 information. And I'm hoping that this presentation will go a long way in helping you there. And then finally, think about submitting an eCTD 4.0 sample submission for technical feedback, right? Before you actually send a live submission. Again, later this year, probably near the end of this year, we are planning to open the door so you could send in those samples and get feedback. All right, so I've got a poll question here for you. My company plans to submit an eCTD 4.0 test submission in A, 2023, B, 2024, C, we've already submitted, or D, we have no plans at this time. All right. So in summary, eCTD 4.0, it builds upon the success of our current eCTD. How does it do that? It enhances document replacement. It harmonizes the submission unit backbone file, provides better utilization and more of the control vocabularies, gives the ability to rename documents and context groups. 4.0 is ready to implement. It's ready now. Regulators are actively working on their regional implementations. FDA has published the specifications, completed its pilots testing, and is now working toward buttoning up all the other things behind the scenes so that we can start accepting these 4.0 submissions next year in 2024. And finally, FDA has put together a web page that has all of the eCTD 4.0 content, and you can easily get to it by going to our normal fda.gov/eCTD webpage where it has all of our current eCTD specifications. You'll see there's a link there for the 4.0 page. So that's the end of the talk today, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Heather Crandall, and I am here from the CDER Electronic Submissions team in the Office of Business Informatics to talk to you today about eCTD. It's more than just the documents within it. So the learning objectives today, by the end of this presentation, you should be able to understand where to find new information that is put out about eCTD submissions. You should be able to list the most common errors that are made by sponsors when submitting an eCTD format. And you should know where to find resources available that will help answer common questions that are received by the electronic submissions team about eCTD submissions. So what's new with eCTD?
In December of 2022, the eCTD submission standards was put on a new web page in the FDA eCTD site. So previously, the submission standards were located in a PDF file and an Excel document that housed all of the specification and attribute files for eCTD version 3.2.2. As of December 2022, they are now located on a web page where you can search for the documents, and you can find that web page in the quick links on the main FDA eCTD site. Also, in November of 2022, the eCTD Technical Conformance Guide was updated to include information about submitting structured data files in Module 3 as part of the substance information. In mid-March of 2023, a handful of validation errors were updated. A new error, 1738, became effective, and 1738 is looking for a match between the study ID as listed in the study tagging file XML and the study ID or SPREF ID listed in the trial summary XPT file. And this is a medium level error, which, as I previously said, went into place in mid-March of 2023. Also with that update, I wanted to highlight the change of scope for validation error 1737. Previously, 1737 looked at a subset of modules 4 and modules 5 to check. And with the update in mid-March, 1737 now looks at everywhere a study tagging file is expected to be. And as a refresher, validation code 1737 is checking that files submitted to a study that are of the same name and leaf title are not both submitted as new. So if there's an update to a file in your study, you should be submitting the newer version as replacing the previously submitted version. I want to get into some metrics around eCTD submissions, looking at the overall metrics and then digging down into the top errors that we are seeing in eCTD submissions. So I'm going to be looking at CDER eCTD formatted submissions between October 1st, 2022 and April 30th, 2023. So within that time period, more than 198,000 submissions were received by CDER, and that includes eCTD formatted submissions, paper applications, and electronic non-eCTD applications. But 94%, the vast majority of those were received in eCTD format. Within that 94%, only roughly 1% of those eCTD submissions are rejected. And of that 1%, I wanted to focus on 4 errors that we see for the majority reasons why these submissions are being rejected. More than 50% are because of a duplicate sequence number. 1,765 of them were rejected in that time frame for duplicate sequence. So that means that we already have a sequence number for that application in our database that was already submitted to us, and then it is being submitted again. So we cannot accept that. Each sequence number must be unique, and so it will get rejected. We also see rejections for single file submissions. So the file can't be coming through the gateway zipped, and more than one file needs to be present in an eCTD submission for it to be a proper eCTD formatted submission. Also, we see submissions with no backbone files, so that means they're either missing the index.xml file or their US regional.xml file. But the area I'm going to focus on in the next couple slides is the second most common error bucket, which is high validation errors. I broke out the high validation errors into the top 10 error codes that we see. There are more than just these that are bucketed within other high errors, but these are the top 10 error codes that result in high validation errors and rejections. Roughly 50% of the high validation errors come from two validation codes around leaf elements. So it's 46% of the high errors, and the first code is validation 1306, which means that there is no leaf element found for a file submitted. So a file has been included in your eCTD submission, and there is no leaf referencing that file within the backbone file submitted. The second code is validation 1323, which is the opposite situation where there is a leaf element in one of your backbone files, but there is no file that it is referencing. The file cannot be found that it is supposed to be referencing. The next set of errors have to do with submission types, and this is 18% of the high validation codes. So validation 2034 is saying that the submission type is invalid for the application type. So this would be a situation where in your eCTD metadata, you have indicated your application is an NDA, but your submission type is an IND safety report. That submission type is invalid for submitting to an NDA. And similarly, validation 2022 is saying that the submission subtype in that backbone file is invalid for the submission type. So the chart of valid application types with their corresponding submission types and submission subtypes can all be found in the Module 1 specification on our eCTD website. And then the final set of high validation errors I'm going to focus on have to do with study data. So these are 10% of our high validation error codes. And the first one is 1734. This validation is looking for a data set named ts.xpt, so the trial summary data set, to have information on the study start date. within your submitted studies in a subset of the Module 4 and Module 5. Within the time period that we are looking at, Code 1734, at least for some of this time, also included checking for the study ID match between the study tagging file and the study ID in the trial summary file. However, as of mid-March of 2023, so within the time period that this data is pulling from, that was shifted to its own medium level validation code of 1738. So 1734 is looking for that study start date within the trial summary file still. And then code 1789 is also part of these top 10 high errors that we see. And 1789 is looking for a file submitted within a Module 4 or Module 5 section to be referenced within a study tagging file. And the study tagging files tell the viewer what files are part of a study so it can group them all together underneath their appropriate study ID and study title. Which leads us to our first challenge question. So most eCTD submission failures are due to A, a duplicate sequence number, B, an eCTD validation error, C, a missing backbone file, or D, a single file submission. And the correct answer is A, a duplicate sequence number. Question number 2, the majority of high validation errors are due to A, a missing ts.xpt file, B, an invalid submission type or subtype, C, leaf elements and files are missing and not referencing each other, or D, data is not referenced in an STF. And the correct answer is C. There are leaf elements not referencing files and files not being referenced by leaf elements. For the final part of my presentation, I wanted to get into some of the common questions that the electronic submissions team receives about eCTD submissions to give some resources and some references if you should have similar questions where you might look for the answers or who you can reach out to about these questions. So I'm going to cover where do I place content within the eCTD? How do I cross-reference to another application? What are our recommended file formats? Do I need a digital signature? And what file tags should be used? So the first question, where do I place content? The main resource to help you answer this question is the document of the comprehensive table of contents, headings, and hierarchy. There's a screenshot of it here. This is a document available on our FDA eCTD webpage, and it lists out the standardized headings that are available to place documents and files within your eCTD submission. If you have further questions on this, we recommend looking at the ICH organization document that the headings and hierarchy document is based off of. And of course, you can reach out to your FDA regulatory project manager and the electronic submissions help team. The second question, how do I cross-reference another eCTD application? In our backbone specification for Module 1 document, we have a section that talks about how to cross-reference a document submitted to another eCTD formatted application. So you can take a look at this. That document is linked here. Or if you have further questions, you can email eSub. What file formats are expected? So the recommendations for file formats are in our file format type specification. So all of the documents broken down by type of file that they would apply to and where they are recommended to be placed are in this specification. But of course, if you have questions about a particular file format, you can reach out to your RPM or email eSub. So do I need a digital signature on my 1571 or 356H form? There's information available about digital or electronic signatures on the FDA webpage found here, and that gives you information about submitting a flattened digital signature, a scanned signature, and what is acceptable. Or, of course, if you have a specific question, you can reach out to eSub. And finally, what file tag should I use? So this is specific to study data files, but you can find more information about study tagging files and the file tags in our specification. There is also information about specific file tags and when they should be used in the Study Data Technical Conformance Guide. The full list of acceptable file tags is found in the validvalues.xml file, and there's a snapshot of it here. And then, of course, if you have questions about a specific file and file tag, you can email eSub. So our final challenge question, where can I find recommended file formats? In the comprehensive table of contents of headings and hierarchies, in the specifications for file format types using eCTD specifications, in the eCTD Technical Conformance Guide, or D, the eCTD Backbone File Specification for Module 1. And the correct answer is B, the file format type specification. So in summary, if you have questions or want to look for announcements, updates, and the specifications, please check out our FDA eCTD webpage linked here. And keep in mind when you're putting together your eCTD submission next, the most common mistake we see that results in a rejection is the use of a duplicate sequence number. So here are some resources that are available to you that you may find helpful. And if you have any questions after this presentation, please reach out to the electronic submissions team for CDER at esub@fda.hhs.gov. And thank you.
Thank you all for the great presentations. For our attendees, as a reminder, if you haven't had a chance to enter your questions into the Q&A chat pod, please do so now. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. Looks like we have some questions already coming in, and the first group of questions will be addressed to Jessica Bernhardt. And here is the first question for Ms. Bernhardt. How does the ESG Next Gen change the way partners use it?
That's a great question. So right now, the ESG Next Gen is in the proof of concept phase. So we're still working out all the technical details. We will, as development continues, we will keep in touch with industry partners and advise of the changes that are coming and provide ample notice. Industry will be involved in all UAT testing, so they'll have an opportunity to test everything out, make sure everything is working prior to us releasing ESG Next Gen.
Thank you for responding to that question. We've got a few more questions for Ms. Bernhardt, and here is the next question. Are there any plans of including the FURLS payment and the FDA OAA database into the ESG database?
At this time, no, there are no plans to include those in the ESG database.
Thank you for responding to that question. We've got just a couple more questions from Ms. Bernhardt, and here's the next question. When will the ESG Next Gen be available to industry?
The ESG Next Gen will be available to industry in FY25, and we will be communicating as the date gets closer, specific dates and times of when the release will take place, but we are targeting FY25 at this point.
Thank you for responding to that question. We have one more question from Ms. Bernhardt, and here's the question. What will happen to the current ESG when ESG Next Gen is released?
We will sunset and retire the legacy ESG. Once all industry is transferred to ESG Next Gen, that sunsetting will take place.
Thank you for responding to that group of questions. Moving on to our next panelist, we've got a few questions that came in for Jonathan Resnick. And here's the first question from Mr. Resnick. Can eCTD 4.0 be used for all submission types, including CDRH submissions?
Thank you, Ray. Yeah, this is a good question. So currently, CDER and CBER are working together on the eCTD 4.0 implementation. So the submission types that one could use under eCTD 4.0 is are for the submissions to those two centers. So we're talking about the NDAs, the ANDAs, BLAs, INDs, drug master files. You can even send it an EUA, for example, as well. But in general, it's submissions that are going to CDER and CBER only at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. We've got a couple more questions from Mr. Resnick, and here's the next question. How do you create group under section 3.2.p.7?
So, another really good question. I definitely recommend that people take a look at the ICH website at the eCTD 4.0 orientation materials. There's two PowerPoint slide decks there available that help describe some of these things. But in general, right, for this question, how do you create a group underneath the lowest level of a eCTD heading? And you do that with keywords. So there is a keyword that you can use for group title that you enter. Now, exactly how this will work from a user perspective, that depends on the eCTD tool vendor and how they implement the user interface in their publishing program. But they'll be following a set of harmonized standards for eCTD 4.0. So I guess long story short, really recommend you check with your eCTD tool vendor that's providing the 4.0 functionality to ask them a specific question like this one. Thank you.
Thank you for answering that question. Got a couple more questions for Mr. Resnick, and here's the next question. In this new system, when filing a BLA, will you be able to reference documents previously submitted to an IND without resubmitting?
Yeah, another good question. It's good to see that people are really focused in on what we're talking about with our presentations here. So, with document reuse, right, what it enables you to do is when you submit a file, you are establishing a document ID with that file. And underneath that document ID, it has the path to the file. It has the document title that would be used with that file whenever you reference the document ID. So if you were to reuse that document ID, and you can do that across applications, what's going to be displayed to the reviewer is that document title that you set up that initial time when referencing the file the first time. So if you're just reusing a file, if you had submitted a particular file under the IND, and now you're coming along down the road and you're submitting the NDA, and absolutely nothing about that file has changed, including the document title that you want displayed under your submission to the NDA, then you could use that document reference functionality. So you don't have to actually, include the file, the physical file again in the sequence folder. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. We have one more question that just came in from Mr. Resnick, and it's the following. Has there been any discussion at the agency to require eCTD format for research INDs in the future?
So as far as I know, no, I haven't heard about any discussion. And a little background for the rest of the audience. In the eCTD guidance, as we call it, the 745A electronic submission guidance for the drug applications to CDER and CBER, currently there is an exemption for what's called non-commercial INDs, which covers the research IND. So those don't have to be submitted in eCTD format. Although we very much encourage you to do so, it certainly helps us when those research INDs come in eCTD format. But as far as I think what this person is getting at here is there a change in the works with our guidance where we're no longer going to offer that exemption? No, I'm not aware of any changes coming down the road for that. Thank you. It was a good question, though.
Thank you for responding to that group of questions. Moving on to our next panelist, we've got a few questions that came in for Heather Crandall. And here is the first question from Ms. Crandall. Is FDA Form 3938 effective?
Yeah, that's a good question. Form 3938 is available to be filled out and used on the FDA Forms webpage. Even though it is, as the questioner pointed out, it's not under the form section in the table of contents of headings and hierarchies. There is a code for it in the form attribute file within our FDA specifications. So if you assign it the proper code, then that would be submitted under section 1.1.
Thank you for responding to that question. We have a couple more questions from Ms. Crandall, and here's the next question. If a drug application is transferred to another entity, how can we confirm with the agency the last sequence that was submitted?
So we recommend when an application is transferred that the full history of the application be transferred as well. But if you have any questions about what the agency has received about an application that you own, you can reach out to the eSub team for CDER, or CBER has their help desk at eSub Prep, and they can help you with that.
Thank you for responding to that question. We do have one more question from Ms. Crandall, and here is the question. Should a ts.xpt be submitted with every submission, which includes an STF, or just the first time the STF is submitted?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. This is a really good question. So a ts.xpt, a trial summary file, should be submitted with every study. And of course, every study should be referenced within a study tagging .xml file. So you only need to submit another TS trial summary file for that study if you need to make updates to the trial summary file. So once you've submitted it, then it is part of your study, and you only need to submit a new one if there are updates to be made, in accordance with the CDISC standards.
Thank you for responding to that question. We've only got a couple minutes left. We're going to try to get one more question in, and we had a question just came in for Jessica Bernhardt, and here is the question. How will industry receive communication about the transition to ESG Next Gen?
That's a great question. So the ESG site will have a link to ESG Next Gen for information as it becomes available. We'll be posting it there. We also will be providing updates at the quarterly PDUFA meetings. We will have meetings with industry partners as well to provide that information, and we will communicate UAT testing as well that industry is encouraged to participate in.
Thank you for responding to that question. And that's all the time we have for questions in this panel. Another huge thank you to our presenters for answering numerous questions that came in. We'll now enter our break until 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Enjoy your break.